Peterson, one of the great patriarchs, elder brothers in our ward, and he served in World War II. He's a veteran and served in the Pacific Theater. And I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and I was just expressing to him the gratitude, appreciation that I have felt more and more as I've gotten older for the men and women of his generation that fought for freedom in World War II. And his generation are getting older and older, not getting younger, and they have great wisdom and knowledge and experiences that they can share with us youngsters, including the very young. We can learn a lot from the men of that generation, not just about the war, but about life and experiences, so that they can enrich us. And they're not going to be with us that much longer. We were talking, he told me the other day that 1,000 veterans of World War II every day die and they leave us. And so that's a lot if you think about it. In 1 year, almost 400,000 veterans are going to leave us. And so we need to get that knowledge and that wisdom and those pearls that they can impart to us, and those experiences that I think we can learn from. And so I hope we can give Brother Peterson attention and courtesy, and I think that he'll maybe be able to ask questions we have at the end, and if you know anything like that. But he's prepared something for us, and we'll give him his attention. I'm sure it'll be great. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Brethren, it's a privilege to be here to talk to you. Now, I'll tell you beforehand, there's some things that I will not talk about. Any veteran was in a war, they'll tell you the same thing. They're personal things, but it isn't always every day of fighting. There's a lot of humor, a lot of fun that we had. There's an old saying in the Army. I was in the Army, and I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience I had, but I wouldn't give a dime to do it again. That's an old saying in the Army. The saying that we had from Utah, I went out of Fort Douglas, Utah in 1942, December of 1942. And I come back in January of 1946. My father, on his deathbed in 1942, told me, he said, "Son, you'll be the only one of my boys, out of my 4 boys, that'll be going in the service." My brother, just older than I, had polio, he couldn't go. My older brother had a heart murmur, and the younger brother was too young to go. So he told me, he said, "You stay close to Heavenly Father, and I guarantee you, you'll come back without any, you won't lose any limbs, you won't be killed, just stay close to Heavenly Father." And I did just that, and I wasn't wounded. I did have spinal meningitis, but I got over that, and the company that I went over with, I trained with in Lompoc, California. At that time was Camp Cook. Today it's Vandenberg Missile Base. And so the Camp Cook does not exist anymore. And so when we landed on an island, a French island, Noumea, New Caledonia, it was owned by the French. And I stepped off the ship and off the gangplank, and I fell flat on my face. They thought I had dengue fever. It's caused by a mosquito, just like malaria is. And so they took me to the station hospital, and they said I had dengue fever, and one doctor said, no, it's probably spinal meningitis, which it was. I weighed 134 pounds at that time, And in 11 days, I down to 86 pounds. So at that time, I thought all types of meningitis was contagious. So they burnt all my clothes in my barracks bag, pictures of my wife and my daughter. And so it was hard to cope with. I was laying in a tent after about 3 months, and I looked out through the wing of the tent and I could see a bunch of boxes with turkeys in it. And I thought, where I was raised in Gunnison, Utah, we had a turkey plant where they killed turkeys and shipped them out. So I asked a nurse when she went back if she had looked and see where these turkeys came from. Sure enough, they was from my hometown. And boy, the tears flowed then. It was so lonesome to go home and see my daughter and my wife. But anyway, brother, I had it better than most. I was a motor sergeant over 28 trucks, 2 tanks, and 2 half-tracks, and probably a dozen or 15 Jeeps. And we got ready to go to the Philippines, and they had us waterproof all of our trucks. We had to get off LCI, and our trucks would roll out and then down into about 5 foot of water, so we had to have the exhaust pipe sticking way high so they would run. And out of all the trucks that we waterproofed, I only had one that failed. And several of the other companies or divisions had good luck, but a lot of them didn't. They didn't waterproof right, so they were dead in the water. Anyway, we got, we stopped at Guadalcanal on the way over. Now, Guadalcanal was taken from the Japanese about 2 weeks before we went by, heading for Lingayen Gulf, which is the big island, Manila. And when we landed there, we had to take all of my trucks and haul ammunition and food and everything, but we couldn't use lights at night. The only time we could move was at night without lights, and this was hard to do. But we had trained for that. We trained our eyes to be able to do that and to listen and for different noises. And so we went 27 hours without sleep, hauling stuff onto the beach and about 4 miles inland. And we come to a little town of, San Jose. In the Philippines, there are towns all along the coast. It's just like Southern California. Little towns all along the coast. Well, I had been in the 3rd platoon. I was attached to the 27th Infantry Division, or 25th Infantry Division, the 27th Regiment. And I was an anti-tank company. I took training in tanks and half-tracks. But anyway, this night the captain come up and he says, "Sergeant, I want you to move from the 3rd platoon to the 2nd platoon." And I said, "Captain, all of my drivers is in the platoon." He says, "You take all your drivers with you and you move into the 2nd platoon." And I didn't like it, but I had no say. He was a captain, I was a sergeant, I had to do what he said. Anyway, the Japanese come in at night, and they were out of the platoon. They were 46 men in the platoon, and out of the platoon that took our place where we were located, there was 4 that lived through. The rest of them was dead. So Heavenly Father was with me again that time. As we progressed all along the coast, our objective was General MacArthur's mansion in Manila, just off Manila Bay. And he got word down to the divisions. There's 4 divisions coming from all directions into Manila, and he gave orders out. He didn't even want a window broke in his mansion. Well, that was pretty hard to do, but that's the way it was. There wasn't one window broke. Everything around him was just completely demolished by artillery or airplanes dropping bombs, but his mansion wasn't hurt. There wasn't a stick of wood broke in his mansion. We never got thanks for that either. But anyway, most everybody that was there got malaria. I had it 16 times while I was there, and I had it 4 times after I was discharged in 1946. But we had to take what we called Atabrain. It was, anyway, it would control malaria. And you turn yellow, your skin all over your body was just a yellow color from taking it, and quinine is what it was. And so many of us, including myself, would take it, and instead of putting it in our mouth, we'd flip it over and then back up and try to mash it into the ground, because it would taste terrible, make you sick to take it. So then they started to coat them like they do aspirins today, and we'd take them. But MacArthur sent an order down that the first sergeant would take a pill, and you'd stick out your tongue and you'd take your Atabrain and make sure you took it. And that helped, I guess. And one time I hadn't heard from my wife for about 6 weeks, and I started to get worried because a lot of the guys that I knew was getting dear Johns, which meant that your wife had run away with another man or divorced you or whatever. So I started to get a little worried, and so I contacted the Red Cross and see if they could find out if everything was all right at home. Well, the day after that, we was going up what we call Highway 9, it's MacArthur Highway today, up in the mountains to Baguio, a resort area. And we had been in combat for 180 consecutive days without a release. And normally you get about 75 days and then you're released. But as we were coming down from Baguio, my brother-in-law, I seen him on a truck going up. And there, so, but I hollered at him, Thomas was his name, and I hollered at him, but he didn't see me, so I never got to see him. And then after we pushed on through Tarlac and a couple of other little towns, and we hit Clark Air Force Base. And we run the Japanese out of there with a lot of casualties. They was dug in underground, and it was a tough fight to get Clark Air Force Base, but we did. And we got bored one time. My drivers come up and he said, Pete, we're not driving very little and we're bored. Why don't you go ask the old man, meaning the captain, if we could take our guns and go up and patrol or see if we couldn't find a little action. So I said, well, I'll ask you guys. So I went out and asked him, and he said, sure, go ahead, take your guns, take your rifles, take your BARs, take your submachine guns, whatever you carry, take them with you, because you never know what's happened. So we went up this ravine. It was down in a wash right along Highway 9. And this one corporal come up and he said, Sergeant, I got to go relieve myself. He said, I got to go now. And I said, all right, take your gun, but don't go very far. Pretty soon we heard him hollering, and we just knew that he'd got hit with a jab or something, so we all jumped up and kind of circled around where we knew he was. And he said, I'm over here, I'm over here. And there's a little raise there, a little, you wouldn't call it a mountain, a little hill. And he says, come over and look, Sergeant. So I went over there, and there's a bunch of limbs opening about the size of this door here. And we looked in there, and here was a dead Japanese on a board, and they had been operating on him. And when our troops went through there, all the other Japanese took off and left this man to die there. All the instruments were still laying there on the table. And then one of the guys said, well, hey, Sergeant, look back here. Well, back about 20 feet, there was a bunch more limbs covering the opening. He opened up there, and from the ceiling to the floor on both walls were stacked of Japanese money. And all through the islands that we went through, the Marianas and the Gilbert Islands, we had what they call invasion money. It was no good only on that particular island. That's what we was paid by, that kind of money. It was printed up for that. So we all figured, well, that's what this is invasion money. So we decided not to say anything to anybody now, and we took about maybe 20 pounds of it, of yen, all paper money. And so in about a week, one of the guys told someone else, and they told the captain, so the captain called me in. He said, "Sergeant, did you find some Japanese money?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." He says, "Well, where is it, and how much is there?" And I told her, "I don't know in its value, but it's stacked from the ceiling to the floor and to the walls, and it's about 12 foot deep back in. There was a walkway right clear to the back." So anyway, about 2 weeks later, we were moving out of there, and so I told the guys, I said, the drivers, I says, fill every one of your compartments with this Japanese money. You guys go on up there the first time you have a day off. And they did, and then after we got to Japan, Nagoya, Japan, it was the same money that they was using in there at that time. About 10 or 12 years later, I had a brother-in-law in the Navy, and I gave him a couple of yen. I said, "Bud, see if this is the same money, printed the same, identical money, 10 or 12 years later." So they must have been millions of dollars worth of money in there in Japanese money. So my wife and I, my present wife and I, went to the Philippines in 89 and 90. And we was going to build a assault runway at Clark Air Force Base. And boy, I was anxious to go. I wanted to go up and see if that money was still in that cave. So it happened to be the commander at the base at that time was a member of our church, the LDS church. And so I got acquainted with him, and I was Sunday school superintendent at the time. Only got to do my job once. I started to work 7 days a week the next week. So I only got to go to Sunday school once after that. But he said, "No," he said, "I can't let you go up there." Now there's a group of communistic people, they call them the NPA, New People's Army, in the Philippines. And they would say on the radio, on TV, that today we're going to kill 2 American children. And the next day they say they're going to kidnap 2 or 3 or 4 American wives. The next day they're going to kill several GIs. And they did a couple of those things. They got 1 child and 1 wife. And